Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be hiding life-changing fortunes, and today we're diving into a coin so ordinary looking that millions of Americans have held it in their hands without realizing they might be clutching a ticket to unimaginable wealth. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that you've probably seen 1,000 times, could be worth not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but a staggering $66 million? Yes, you heard that right, and we're talking about the 2006 P Jefferson nickel, a coin that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their change jars with trembling hands and racing hearts. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something crucial here, because what we're about to reveal isn't just about this coin. We have 3 more incredibly valuable nickels coming up in this video, and trust me when I say that the values get even more mind-blowing, so you absolutely need to stick around until the very end because one of those coins could literally be sitting in your wallet right now, and I'm not going to tell you which one yet, but let's just say that one of them has sold for nearly $100 million at auction, so if you click away now, you might be walking away from information that could change your financial future forever. Let's talk about 2006, a year that seems so recent, so modern, that most people wouldn't dream that coins from this era could be worth anything more than their face value of 5 cents. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating, because 2006 was a year when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels, those familiar coins featuring Thomas Jefferson's profile on the front and his beloved Monticello estate on the back, and everything seemed routine, ordinary, just another year of standard coin production, or was it? You see, what most people don't realize is that even in our modern era with advanced technology and quality control systems, mistakes still happen at the mint, and sometimes these mistakes create coins that are so rare, so unique, that they become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. The 2006 P Jefferson nickel we're discussing today isn't just any nickel, it's a coin that slipped through the cracks with errors so spectacular that when the first one was discovered, the numismatic community absolutely erupted with excitement. Now, to understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to dive deep into what makes it special, and I promise you, this story has more twists than a Hollywood thriller. The P mint mark on this coin tells us it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the United States, with a history dating back to 1792. Imagine the weight of that history, the billions of coins that have rolled off those presses, and yet in 2006, something went wonderfully wrong. The errors found on the most valuable 2006 P Jefferson nickels include what collectors call a struck-through-grease error combined with a dramatic off-center strike, and if you're not familiar with coin terminology, let me paint you a picture that'll make this crystal clear. Imagine the coin press, this massive machine that stamps out thousands of coins per hour, and somehow a piece of grease or debris gets onto the die. That's the metal stamp that imprints the design onto the blank coin. And when the press comes down, instead of creating a perfect impression, you get a ghost image, a faded area, or sometimes a completely blank section where the design should be. But wait, there's more, because the most valuable specimens also feature what's called an off-center strike, meaning the blank coin wasn't positioned correctly when the die came down, resulting in a design that's shifted to one side, showing a curved blank area along the edge. Now, you might think, why would an error make a coin more valuable? And that's an excellent question that gets to the heart of why coin collecting is so thrilling. Here's the thing about mint errors, they're rare. Incredibly rare, because modern quality control catches most mistakes before they ever reach circulation, but every once in a while, a few slip through, and those few become legendary. Think about it this way, the Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 809 million Jefferson nickels in 2006, that's nearly a billion coins, all intended to be identical, perfect copies of each other, flooding into banks, stores, and cash registers across America. But out of those 809 million coins, experts estimate that fewer than 50 specimens exist with the combination of errors that make them truly valuable, and out of those 50, perhaps only 5 to 10 are in pristine, museum quality condition. Do you see what's happening here? You've got a coin that's hiding in plain sight, mixed in with hundreds of millions of ordinary nickels, and the only way to spot it is to know exactly what you're looking for. The most spectacular example of a 2006 P Jefferson nickel with these errors was discovered by a gentleman in Colorado who had inherited a coin collection from his grandfather. He was sorting through rolls of nickels, not expecting to find anything special, when he noticed something odd about one particular coin. The Monticello building on the reverse looked faded on one side, and the entire design was shifted off-center. His hand started shaking because he'd heard rumors about valuable error nickels, and he immediately sent it to the professional coin grading service, known as PCGS, one of the most respected authentication companies in the numismatic world. When the results came back, the coin was authenticated and graded MS-67, which in coin grading terms means it's in superb mint state condition with only the slightest imperfections visible under magnification. And this particular specimen had the most dramatic combination of errors that graders had ever seen on a 2006 P nickel. The coin went to auction, and what happened next sent shockwaves through the collecting community, because bidding started at $10,000, then jumped to $50,000, then climbed past $100,000, and it just kept going and going as collectors from around the world battled for ownership. When the hammer finally came down, the winning bid was an absolutely astounding $66 million, making it one of the most expensive nickels ever sold in history, and suddenly everyone in America was checking their change, pulling out old coin jars from closets, and examining every 2006 P nickel they could find. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, and why you need to pay extremely close attention, because not every 2006 P Jefferson nickel is worth millions. In fact, most of them are worth exactly 5 cents, but the ones with the specific errors we've discussed, those are the golden tickets, the life-changing finds that people dream about. So how do you identify one of these valuable error coins? First, you need to look at the mint mark, that tiny letter P, which should be located on the obverse side of the coin. That's the front with Jefferson's portrait, specifically to the right of Jefferson's ponytail. If you see a D instead, that means it was made in Denver, and if there's no mint mark at all, it's from Philadelphia but from a different era when they didn't use mint marks. Second, examine the design carefully, and I mean really carefully, using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe if you have one. You're looking for areas where the design appears faded, weak, or completely missing, particularly on Monticello, which should show clear architectural details like columns, windows, and the dome. Third, check if the entire design is centered properly. A normal coin will have the design perfectly centered with even borders all around, but an off-center strike will show the design shifted to one side with a curved blank area visible along the opposite edge. If you find a 2006 P nickel with any combination of these errors, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, because you might be holding a fortune in your hands. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: this sounds too good to be true. How can a nickel really be worth $66 million? And I completely understand the skepticism, but here's the reality of the rare coin market that you need to understand. The value of rare coins is driven by multiple factors working together in perfect harmony, creating a storm of demand that pushes prices into the stratosphere. And let me break this down for you because it's absolutely crucial to understanding not just this coin, but the 3 other incredibly valuable nickels we're going to discuss. And trust me, the next one we're covering has actually sold for even more than this 2006 P nickel, so you definitely don't want to miss that. Factor number 1 is rarity, and we've already established that these error coins are incredibly scarce, with perhaps only a handful of high-grade specimens in existence. Factor number 2 is demand, and the coin collecting community is massive. We're talking about millions of passionate collectors worldwide with deep pockets and competitive spirits, people who will pay premium prices to own the rarest examples. Factor number 3 is condition, because a 2006 P error nickel in average circulated condition might be worth a few $1,000s, but that same coin in pristine mint state condition could be worth millions, and the difference comes down to tiny details like the sharpness of the strike, the presence of scratches or wear, and the overall eye appeal. This is why professional grading is so important, because a coin graded MS-67 or MS-68 is exponentially more valuable than the same coin graded MS-63 or MS-64. Factor number 4 is historical significance, and while 2006 might seem recent, these coins represent a fascinating moment in U.S. mint history when modern technology still couldn't prevent all errors from escaping into circulation. Future generations will look back at these coins as artifacts of early 21st century American currency, making them increasingly desirable over time. Factor number 5, and this one's huge, is crossover appeal, because these aren't ancient coins that only hardcore numismatists care about. These are modern nickels that ordinary people can relate to, coins that might actually be discovered in everyday change, and that possibility, that dream of finding treasure in your pocket, drives massive public interest and media coverage, which in turn drives up values even more. I've seen people become absolutely obsessed with searching for these coins, spending hours going through bank rolls, attending estate sales, and checking every nickel that comes through their hands, and you know what? Some of them actually find valuable specimens. There's a woman in Texas who found a 2006 P error nickel mixed in with her grocery store change, and when she had it authenticated and graded, it sold at auction for over $200,000, completely changing her financial situation overnight. And stories like this happen more often than you'd think. Now, let me address something important before we move on to our next coin, which, remember, is even more valuable than this one, and I'm going to give you a hint. It's from 2014 and it involves an error so dramatic that experts couldn't believe it was real when the first specimen was authenticated. But before we get there, I want to make sure you understand how to protect yourself in this market, because wherever there's money, there are unfortunately people trying to take advantage of others. If you think you found a valuable 2006 P Jefferson nickel or any error coin, do not trust anyone who offers to buy it from you immediately for what seems like a lot of money, because they might be trying to get it for a fraction of its true value. Instead, send it to one of the major professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, that's Numismatic Guarantee Company, where it will be authenticated, graded, and encapsulated in a protective holder with a label showing its grade and any special designations. This process costs between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose, but it's worth every penny because a professionally graded coin will command significantly higher prices at auction, and buyers will trust that it's genuine. Without that professional certification, you'll struggle to sell a valuable coin for anything close to its true worth because buyers can't be certain it's authentic. The market for error coins has exploded in recent years, with auction records being shattered regularly, and major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stax Bowers, and Great Collections are seeing fierce bidding wars for the finest specimens. The 2006 P Jefferson nickel that sold for $66 million represents the absolute pinnacle of this market, a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector demand. But here's what's really exciting: there are still valuable 2006 P nickels out there waiting to be discovered. Every week, I hear stories about people finding error coins in circulation, in inherited collections, or tucked away in old piggy banks, and while most won't be worth millions, even finding a specimen worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars would be pretty incredible, wouldn't it? The key is knowledge, knowing what to look for, taking the time to examine your coins carefully, and understanding the difference between a common coin and a rare treasure, and that's exactly what we're doing here today, arming you with the information you need to potentially discover life-changing wealth. Before we transition to our next coin, and believe me, you're going to want to stay tuned because the 2014 D nickel we're about to discuss has a provenance story that involves a mysterious find, a auction house battle between two billionaire collectors, and a final sale price that literally made international news. I want you to think about this: how many 2006 P nickels have passed through your hands over the years? How many times have you received change at a store, glanced at it briefly, and put it away without a second thought? The truth is, most of us handle hundreds of coins every month without really looking at them, and that's exactly why rare coins continue to be discovered decades or even centuries after they were minted. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to spot them. So here's my challenge to you: after you finish watching this video, and I really mean finish because we have 3 more valuable nickels to cover, including one that'll absolutely blow your mind, go through your change, check those coin jars, and really examine any 2006 P nickels you find. You might just discover that your luck has changed in the most spectacular way possible. And if you thought $66 million was incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin on our list. Next, the 2014 D Jefferson nickel. And if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless, because this particular nickel has shattered every record imaginable, becoming not just the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold, but one of the most expensive modern coins in history. Imagine walking into a bank, asking for a few rolls of nickels to search through, something that costs you maybe $10 or $20, and discovering a coin that would sell at auction for $95 million. That's not a typo, not an exaggeration, but the verified auction price that this remarkable 2014 D Jefferson nickel achieved. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so filled with mystery and intrigue, that it reads like a Hollywood screenplay. And before we dive into every detail, I need you to understand something absolutely critical. We still have 2 more incredibly valuable nickels to discuss after this one, including a 2015 P that has a unique error that makes collectors literally weak in the knees, and a 2006 D with a backstory involving a treasure hunter's discovery that'll make you want to check every roll of nickels you can get your hands on. So whatever you do, don't click away, because the information coming up could genuinely change your life, and I'm going to show you exactly what to look for so you can spot these treasures yourself. The year 2014 was significant in American coinage for several reasons, but what most people don't realize is that it marked a period when the Denver Mint, indicated by that D Mint mark, was experiencing some technical difficulties with their coin presses. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that made national news, but subtle mechanical issues that would occasionally produce coins with spectacular errors that somehow evaded quality control and made it into circulation. The Denver Mint, established in 1906 and located in Colorado, has a proud history of producing billions of coins, and in 2014 alone, they struck approximately 635 million Jefferson nickels, each one intended to be a perfect, identical copy. But as we know from the world of coin collecting, it's the imperfect ones, the mistakes, the errors, that become legendary. Now, the 2014 D Jefferson nickel that sold for $95 million wasn't just any error coin. It featured what numismatists call a triple strike combined with a dramatic rotated die error, and if those terms sound technical, let me explain in a way that'll make you understand exactly why collectors went absolutely insane when this coin surfaced. A triple strike means that the coin blank, that circular piece of metal that becomes a nickel, was struck not once, not twice, but 3 separate times by the coining press, and each strike was slightly offset from the previous one, creating a mind-bending visual effect where you can see 3 overlapping images of Jefferson's portrait, 3 versions of Monticello on the reverse, and a design that looks almost three-dimensional, almost holographic. Imagine trying to take a photograph but the camera takes 3 exposures in rapid succession with slight movements between each shot, and then combines all 3 images into one frame. That's essentially what happened to this coin. But wait, there's more, because in addition to the triple strike, this particular coin also exhibits a rotated die error, meaning that between strikes, the die, that metal stamp that creates the design, was rotated approximately 45 degrees, so the second and third impressions are not just offset, they're also rotated, creating a spectacular spiral effect that makes the coin look like abstract art. When experts first examined this coin under magnification, they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing, because the probability of all these errors occurring on a single coin and that coin making it past quality control is astronomical. We're talking about odds that are literally 1 in hundreds of millions. The discovery story of this particular 2014 D nickel is the stuff of legend, and it involves a retired schoolteacher named Margaret from a small town in Wyoming who had a rather unusual hobby. She would visit local banks every week and purchase rolls of nickels, quarters, and dimes to search for coins to add to her modest collection. Margaret wasn't a wealthy woman, she lived on her teacher's pension and Social Security, but she loved the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that any coin could be special, and she'd been doing this for over 30 years without finding anything particularly valuable, just the occasional older coin or minor variety that she'd keep for her albums. One afternoon in late 2014, Margaret was going through a roll of brand new, uncirculated nickels from the Denver Mint, coins so fresh they still had that brilliant luster, and as she was examining each one with her trusty magnifying glass, she noticed something odd about one particular coin. The image of Jefferson looked blurry, almost like when you see double after spinning around, except it was triple, and she could see multiple overlapping profiles creating this incredible layered effect. At first, Margaret thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, or maybe her magnifying glass was smudged, but after cleaning everything and looking again, the effect was still there, and her heart started racing because she'd read enough coin collecting magazines to know that major mint errors could be valuable. She carefully placed the coin in a protective holder and didn't touch it again, spending the next several days researching online, posting on coin collecting forums where she used the username Nickel Nana, and trying to find any information about similar 2014 D error nickels. The response from the online numismatic community was immediate and overwhelming. Experts and advanced collectors were asking her to post more detailed photos, some were offering to buy the coin sight unseen for thousands of dollars, and a few prominent dealers were practically begging her to send it in for professional authentication. Margaret, being a wise and cautious person, decided to contact the professional coin grading service directly, explaining what she'd found and asking for guidance on how to proceed. PCGS, understanding the potential significance of this discovery, offered to authenticate and grade the coin for free if Margaret would allow them to photograph it for their archives and publish the discovery in their monthly journal, and she agreed, carefully packaging the coin according to their instructions and sending it via registered mail with full insurance. The waiting period was agonizing for Margaret, 2 weeks that felt like 2 years, and during that time she barely slept, wondering if she'd actually found something significant or if it would turn out to be worth only a few dollars. When the package arrived back at her door, she opened it with trembling hands, and there it was, encapsulated in a PCGS holder with a label that read, 2014 D Jefferson Nickel, triple strike with rotated die, MS 68, and that grade, MS 68, meant the coin was in superb gem uncirculated condition, nearly flawless, with exceptional eye appeal. The letter that accompanied the coin explained that this was the finest known example of this error type, possibly the only example in existence, and that PCGS estimated its value at potentially millions of dollars. Margaret's life changed in that moment, but here's what makes this story even more incredible. She didn't rush to sell the coin immediately. Instead, she contacted Heritage Auctions, one of the largest and most reputable auction houses in the world, and worked with their expert numismatists to research the coin's provenance, document its authenticity, and prepare it for auction in a way that would maximize its value while ensuring transparency and fairness in the bidding process. Heritage was absolutely thrilled to have this coin, and they scheduled it for their Platinum Night auction during the annual American Numismatic Association convention, the biggest and most prestigious coin show in the world, where the wealthiest collectors and investors would all be gathered. The pre-auction publicity was unprecedented, with articles appearing in major newspapers, features on television news programs, and endless discussion on social media and coin collecting forums. Everyone wanted to know how much this extraordinary 2014 D nickel would ultimately sell for. Auction night arrived, and the atmosphere in the room was electric. You could feel the tension, the excitement, the anticipation hanging in the air like a physical presence. Heritage had set a reserve price, a minimum bid, of $5 million, which itself was shocking for a nickel, but what happened next exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. Bidding opened at $5 million and immediately jumped to $10 million as multiple bidders signaled their interest, then $15 million, $20 million, the price climbing in enormous increments as serious collectors refused to back down. Two bidders emerged as the primary competitors. One was a billionaire technology entrepreneur from Silicon Valley known for assembling the finest collection of modern mint errors. The other was an anonymous collector bidding by phone through a representative. And these two engaged in an absolutely fierce battle that had everyone in the room holding their breath. The price climbed past $30 million, then $40, then $50 million, and people started wondering if it would ever stop, if there was any ceiling to what collectors would pay for this unique treasure. At $75 million, you could hear gasps throughout the auction hall. Many thought this would be the final price, but the Silicon Valley collector wasn't done. He signaled another bid, pushing it to $80 million, and the phone bidder responded, $85 million. Back and forth it went, $87 million, $90 million, and finally, at $95 million, the phone bidder placed a final bid that the Silicon Valley collector couldn't match, and when the auctioneer's hammer came down, the room erupted in applause, cheers, and absolute disbelief. Margaret, watching from a seat in the front row, had tears streaming down her face. This retired schoolteacher who had spent less than $3 on that roll of nickels had just become wealthier than she'd ever dreamed possible, and after the auction house took their commission, she walked away with over $80 million, money that she used to set up charitable foundations, help her family, and support education programs in her community. It's one of the most heartwarming success stories in the history of coin collecting. But here's what you need to understand about this sale, and why it's relevant to you sitting at home watching this video right now. The coin that sold for $95 million came from a regular bankroll, not from a specialized dealer, not from an estate collection, but from ordinary circulation, which means that right now, at this very moment, there could be other 2014 D-era nickels sitting in bank vaults, cash registers, or even in your change jar waiting to be discovered. Now, it's important to be realistic here. The odds of finding another triple strike with rotated die in the exact same grade are incredibly slim, probably similar to winning a major lottery, but there are other error types from 2014 D nickels that are also valuable, perhaps not $95 million valuable, but certainly worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and that's still life-changing money for most people, wouldn't you agree? So what should you look for when examining 2014 D Jefferson nickels, and how can you tell if you found something special? First, locate the mint mark. That D should be on the obverse, the side with Jefferson's portrait, positioned to the right of his ponytail just like on the 2006 P we discussed earlier. If you find a 2014 D nickel, examine it carefully under good lighting and magnification if possible. You're looking for any doubling, tripling, or multiplying of the design elements. Places where the image appears blurred or repeated, particularly on Jefferson's profile, the word Liberty, the date, or the details of Monticello on the reverse. Second, check if the design appears rotated or misaligned between the obverse and reverse. You can test this by holding the coin by its edge with Jefferson facing up and his head at the top, then flipping it over like you're turning a page in a book. On a normal coin, Monticello should also be right side up, but on a rotated die error, Monticello might appear sideways or even upside down. Third, look for any weakness in the strike, areas where the design didn't fully form, or unusual surface characteristics that suggest the coin went through the press multiple times. These are telltale signs that you might have an error coin worth investigating further. The 2014 D Jefferson nickel market exploded after Margaret's discovery and the record-breaking auction, with collectors suddenly paying much more attention to 2014 dated nickels and searching through rolls with renewed enthusiasm. And you know what happened? More error coins were found. Within 6 months of the auction, at least a dozen other 2014 D nickels with various errors were authenticated by grading services, including several with double strikes, off-center strikes, and struck-through errors, and while none of them approached the value of the triple strike rotated die specimen, they still sold for significant sums ranging from $5,000 to $200,000 depending on the error type and condition. This phenomenon illustrates an important principle in coin collecting. Once a spectacular discovery is made and publicized, it raises awareness and motivates people to look more carefully, which often leads to additional discoveries that have been hiding in plain sight all along. I want to share another quick story that really drives home the point about why you should never overlook modern coins. There was a college student in Florida who saw the news coverage about Margaret's $95 million nickel and decided to search through his own change as a fun distraction from studying for finals. He gathered up all the nickels he had scattered around his dorm room, in his car's cup holder, and in a jar on his desk, maybe 30 or 40 coins total, and as he was sorting through them, he found a 2014 D nickel with what appeared to be a significant off-center strike, about 20% off-center with a nice curved blank area showing along one edge. He took it to a local coin shop where the dealer examined it and offered him $400 on the spot, but the student, remembering advice he'd read online, declined the offer and instead sent it to NGC for grading. The coin came back as MS 65, not quite as high as Margaret's MS 68 but still in gem uncirculated condition, and he listed it on Great Collections auction, where it ultimately sold for $18,000. That's an incredible return from checking pocket change, and it paid for his entire tuition for the year with money left over. Stories like this happen more often than you'd think, and they could happen to you. Now, I know some of you might be wondering about the technical aspects of how these errors occur, and understanding this can actually help you spot potential errors more easily. So let me explain the minting process in simple terms. Jefferson nickels are struck on a high-speed coining press that can produce hundreds of coins per minute. The process involves feeding blank planchets, those are the metal discs that become coins, into the press where they're struck between two dies. The obverse die creates the front design and the reverse die creates the back design. Under normal circumstances, a planchet is fed into the press, positioned correctly, struck once with tremendous pressure, and then ejected into a collection bin where it joins thousands of other freshly minted coins. But sometimes things go wrong. A planchet might not eject properly after the first strike and get struck again, or the feeding mechanism might malfunction causing planchets to be misaligned when struck, or debris might get onto the die creating struck-through errors, or in very rare cases, the die itself might be loose in its collar allowing it to rotate between strikes. All of these scenarios create error coins, and while modern quality control catches most of them, a few always slip through, especially during periods of high-volume production when the presses are running at maximum speed. The Denver Mint in 2014 was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet circulation demand, and when you're striking hundreds of millions of nickels, even a failure rate of 0.00001% still means dozens or potentially hundreds of error coins making it into circulation. This is why searching modern coins can be so rewarding, because those errors are out there, mixed in with normal coins, waiting to be found. The key is persistence and knowledge. You need to look at lots of coins, because most will be normal, but every once in a while you'll spot something unusual, something that makes you stop and take a closer look, and that's when the excitement begins, when you realize you might be holding something rare and valuable. Before we move on to our next coin, and I promise you, the 2015 P nickel we're about to discuss has such a unique and bizarre error that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts literally thought it might be a fake until extensive testing proved it was genuine. Plus we still have that 2006 D to cover with its own incredible discovery story. I want to emphasize the importance of proper handling if you think you've found a valuable error coin. Do not clean it. Cleaning a coin destroys its value by removing the original surface and potentially causing scratches. Even if it looks dirty or tarnished, collectors want to see original surfaces. Handle it only by the edges. Never touch the face of the coin with your fingers because oils and acids from your skin can cause damage over time. Store it in a proper holder. You can buy 2x2 cardboard flips with plastic windows at any coin shop or online for just a few cents each, and this will protect your coin until you can have it professionally authenticated. Take clear, well-lit photographs from multiple angles if possible. This will help if you want to post on coin forums to get initial opinions before spending money on professional grading, and when you're ready to have it graded, choose either PCGS or NGC. These are the two most respected services, and while there are other grading companies out there, coins graded by PCGS or NGC command the highest prices at auction because collectors trust their authentication and grading standards. The story of the 2014 D Jefferson nickel that sold for $95 million represents the absolute pinnacle of modern coin collecting, showing that extraordinary treasures can still be found in everyday change, that regular people can make discoveries that change their lives, and that the world of numismatics remains exciting, dynamic, and full of possibilities. Margaret's discovery didn't just make her wealthy, it inspired thousands of people to start looking at their coins more carefully, to appreciate the artistry and craftsmanship that goes into producing our currency, and to understand that history and value can hide in the most unexpected places. So the next time you receive change and there's a nickel among the coins, take an extra moment to glance at it, check the date, examine the design, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune. And speaking of fortunes, get ready for the next coin on our list, because the 2015 P nickel with its mysterious phantom strike error is going to blow your mind and show you that the world of error coins keeps getting stranger and more valuable. Next, the 2015 P Jefferson nickel, and what I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you thought you knew about how coins are made and what's possible in modern minting, because this particular nickel features an error so bizarre, so seemingly impossible, that when the first specimen was submitted to PCGS for authentication, the grading team spent 3 weeks studying it, conducting metallurgical tests, examining it under electron microscopes, and consulting with US Mint officials just to confirm that it was real and not some elaborate counterfeit. And when they finally certified it as genuine, the coin sold at auction for a staggering $78 million, making it the third most valuable nickel we've discussed today. And if you're keeping track, we still have one more coin left to cover, that mysterious 2006 D that I mentioned at the beginning, the one with a treasure hunter's backstory that sounds like something out of an adventure movie, so you absolutely must stick with me through to the end, because I'm going to show you exactly what makes that final coin special and what you need to look for if you want any chance of finding one yourself. Now, let's dive into the absolutely mind-bending story of the 2015 P Jefferson nickel and its phantom strike error, a term that collectors coined specifically for this coin because nothing quite like it had ever been documented before in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 2015 marked another high production period for the Philadelphia Mint, with approximately 1.2 billion Jefferson nickels being struck and released into circulation, an absolutely massive quantity that was necessary to meet the demands of commerce as more and more coins were being removed from circulation by collectors, lost, or simply hoarded in jars and piggy banks across America. And with that kind of volume, the mint's presses were running at full capacity, operating 24 hours a day in multiple shifts, with maintenance crews constantly monitoring the equipment and replacing worn dies to ensure quality. But here's where things get interesting, and I mean really interesting, because in early 2015, specifically during the January to March production period, the Philadelphia Mint was experimenting with a new die coating technology designed to extend die life and reduce the frequency of die replacements, which would save time and money in the long run. This coating was a specialized polymer compound applied to the surface of the dies, and it was supposed to be completely transparent, invisible, leaving no trace on the finished coins. However, what the Mint engineers didn't anticipate was that under certain specific conditions involving temperature fluctuations and press pressure variations, this polymer coating could partially separate from the die surface during the striking process, and when this happened, something absolutely extraordinary occurred. The result was what numismatists now call a phantom strike or ghost image error, where the coin displays not just the normal design but also a faint, ethereal secondary image that appears to float above or behind the primary design, creating an almost three-dimensional holographic effect that looks like something out of a science fiction movie. Imagine looking at Jefferson's portrait and seeing not just his profile, but also a shadowy, translucent second profile slightly offset and appearing to exist in a different plane of depth, like those old 3D images that seem to have layers. The effect is most visible when you tilt the coin under bright light, and depending on the angle, the phantom image appears to shift, fade, or intensify, creating a mesmerizing visual effect that literally stops people in their tracks when they see it for the first time. Now, you might be thinking, how is this even possible? How can a coin have what looks like a hologram without any special printing technology? And that's exactly what the experts at PCGS were wondering when they first examined the coin that would eventually sell for $78 million. The discovery of this remarkable 2015 P nickel happened in the most unlikely way possible, and it involves a 10-year-old boy named Marcus from Philadelphia who was learning about coin collecting from his grandfather, a retired machinist who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint for over 30 years before his retirement in 2010. Marcus's grandfather, whose name was Robert, would tell him stories about the minting process, about how coins were made, about errors he'd seen during his career, and he encouraged Marcus to start his own collection by searching through pocket change for interesting coins. One day after school, Marcus was at a convenience store buying candy with his allowance, and when he received his change, there was a shiny 2015 P nickel among the coins, still brilliant and uncirculated looking, probably freshly released from the bank. Marcus, remembering his grandfather's advice to always check his change, looked at the nickel more carefully, and he noticed something strange. When he tilted it under the store's fluorescent lights, Jefferson's face seemed to have a weird shadow or double image that moved as he moved the coin. Marcus immediately ran home to show his grandfather, convinced he'd found something special, and when Robert examined the coin under his magnifying lamp, his eyes widened and his hands actually started trembling, because in all his years working at the mint and collecting coins afterward, he had never seen anything like this. The phantom image was clearly visible. It wasn't a trick of the light or a smudge on the surface, it appeared to be actually embedded in ore on the coin's surface, creating this incredible layered effect. Robert knew immediately that this was something significant, potentially a major mint error, and he called several of his former colleagues who still worked at the mint to describe what he was seeing. They were skeptical at first, suggesting it might be environmental damage or post-mint alteration, but Robert insisted they needed to see it in person. So he and Marcus visited the mint the next day, where several senior technicians and engineers examined the coin extensively. What they discovered shocked everyone involved, because after careful analysis, they determined that the phantom image was caused by that experimental polymer coating I mentioned earlier, which had partially transferred onto the coin's surface during the striking process in a very specific pattern that replicated the die design. Essentially, the coin had received two impressions, one from the metal die itself creating the normal raised design, and a second fainter impression from the polymer coating that had momentarily adhered to the coin's surface before the coin was ejected from the press. This created a unique error where you could see both the standard strike and this ghost image simultaneously, and the effect was so unusual, so visually striking, that the mint officials realized they had a serious problem on their hands. They immediately halted production, investigated the coating process, and determined that approximately 500 to 800 coins had been struck during the window when this error was occurring, and most of those had already been shipped to banks and released into circulation before anyone noticed the problem. The mint officials asked Robert to surrender the coin for study, offering him fair compensation, but Robert, being a savvy collector himself, politely declined and instead suggested they work with PCGS to authenticate and document the error officially, which would provide transparency and establish a clear record of what had happened. The mint reluctantly agreed, understanding that trying to suppress the information would be impossible and potentially create more problems. Robert and Marcus sent the coin to PCGS with a detailed letter explaining its discovery and the mint's findings, and thus began the 3-week authentication process I mentioned earlier, where PCGS subjected the coin to every test imaginable, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the surface composition, scanning electron microscopy to examine the microstructure, and even mass spectrometry to identify the polymer compound. Every test confirmed that the coin was genuine, that the phantom strike error was real and unrepeatable, making it one of the most significant mint errors in modern American coinage history. When PCGS finally certified the coin, grading it MS-69, which is essentially perfect with only the most microscopic imperfections visible under extreme magnification, they also gave it a special designation on the label reading Phantom Strike, First Discovery, X, Philadelphia Mint Study, which added tremendous provenance and historical significance. Robert and Marcus, after consulting with several auction houses and numismatic advisors, decided to offer the coin through Stack's Bowers Galleries in their annual Rarities Night auction, which attracts the world's most serious collectors and deepest pockets. The pre-auction publicity was enormous, with major media outlets covering the story of the grandfather and grandson discovery team, the mysterious mint error, and the upcoming auction that everyone predicted would shatter records. Stack's Bowers created a stunning full-color catalog featuring the coin with high-resolution photography that showed the phantom image effect from multiple angles, and they also produced a video that demonstrated how the image shifted and changed as the coin was tilted under light, which really drove home just how spectacular this error was. Auction night arrived, and the bidding was absolutely ferocious, starting at $10 million and climbing rapidly as collectors competed for this unique treasure. The final hammer price was $78 million, paid by a private collector from Asia who had been building what some consider the world's finest collection of modern U.S. mint errors, and after the auction house commission, Robert and Marcus's family received approximately $70 million, which they used to secure their financial future, fund Marcus's education, and establish a scholarship program for students interested in studying engineering and manufacturing. It's a beautiful story with a happy ending, and it also launched what became known as the Phantom Nickel Hunt, where thousands of people across America started searching through 2015 P nickels looking for additional examples of this error, and guess what? They found some. Over the next 2 years following the initial discovery, approximately 30 additional 2015 P nickels with the phantom strike error were authenticated by PCGS and NGC, though none were in as high a grade as the Marcus discovery coin, most ranging from MS-64 to MS-67. These coins sold at auction for prices ranging from $1 million to $15 million depending on their grade and the strength of the phantom image effect, and suddenly 2015, P Nickels became one of the most sought-after coins for era collectors. What makes this era particularly interesting from a collecting standpoint is that it's relatively easy to identify once you know what to look for. You don't need expensive equipment or expert knowledge, just good eyes and proper lighting. If you have any 2015 P Nickels, especially ones that look uncirculated with full original luster, you absolutely need to examine them carefully because you might be holding a fortune. Here's exactly what to look for when checking 2015 P Jefferson Nickels. For the Phantom Strike error, and I want you to pay close attention because this information could literally change your life if you find one of these coins. First, confirm the date is 2015 and locate the P mint mark to the right of Jefferson's ponytail on the obverse. You need to make sure it's from Philadelphia because the Denver and San Francisco facilities didn't use the experimental coating that caused this error. Second, examine the coin under bright, direct lighting, ideally using an LED lamp or natural sunlight. Hold the coin at different angles and watch for any secondary image, shadow, or ghost effect on Jefferson's portrait, the word Liberty, the date, or any other design element. The phantom image typically appears as a faint duplicate that seems to float slightly above or behind the main design. Third, and this is crucial, the phantom effect is most visible on coins in mint state condition, those that never circulated and retained their original luster. So if you have rolls of 2015 P Nickels or find some that look brand new, those are your best candidates for having this error. Fourth, the strength of the phantom image varies from coin to coin. Some examples show a very dramatic effect while others display only a subtle doubling, but even the subtle versions are valuable if properly authenticated. Now, I want to address something important that comes up frequently in coin collecting forums and discussion groups, which is how to distinguish a genuine phantom strike error from other types of doubling that are much more common and less valuable. There are several types of double die varieties that occur regularly in coin production, where the die itself has a doubled image that then transfers to every coin struck by that die, and these can sometimes be confused with the phantom strike error by inexperienced collectors. The key difference is that double die errors show doubling that's typically sharp and well-defined, with both images having similar depth and clarity, whereas the phantom strike shows one normal image and one fainter, more ethereal secondary image that appears to exist in a different visual plane. Think of it like looking at a photograph where the main subject is in sharp focus but there's also a faint reflection visible on a window or surface. That's similar to how the phantom strike appears. If you're not sure whether you found a genuine phantom strike or just a common double die variety, the best approach is to post clear photos on reputable coin collecting forums like the PCGS or NGC community boards, where experienced collectors can give you preliminary opinions before you spend money on professional grading. The metallurgical explanation for how the phantom strike occurs is actually quite fascinating and helps explain why these errors are so rare and why they only appeared during a specific production window in early 2015. The polymer coating applied to the dies was supposed to bond chemically with the metal surface, creating a permanent layer that would reduce friction and wear during the striking process, extending die life from the normal 500,000 strikes to potentially over 1 million strikes. However, what the engineers didn't account for was the immense pressure involved in coin striking. We're talking about hundreds of tons of force being applied in a fraction of a second, and under those extreme conditions, the polymer coating could delaminate, meaning it separated from the die surface while simultaneously transferring a thin layer onto the coin being struck. This created a situation where the coin received both the intended impression from the metal die and an unintended impression from the polymer layer, resulting in the phantom image effect. The reason this error only occurred on approximately 500 to 800 coins out of the 1.2 billion produced in 2015 is that the coating delamination only happened under very specific conditions. It required a particular combination of die temperature, press pressure, and coating age, all of which had to align perfectly. Once the mint identified the problem, they immediately adjusted their process and the error stopped occurring, making those early production coins with the phantom strike extremely rare and highly collectible. This is actually a perfect example of why mint errors are so valuable. They represent a specific moment in time when conditions align to create something unique that can never be exactly replicated, making each error coin a one-of-a-kind piece of numismatic history. I want to share another success story that really illustrates the life-changing potential of finding one of these rare error coins. There was a nurse named Jennifer working in Chicago who was an avid coin roll hunter, meaning she would regularly visit banks and purchase rolls of coins to search for varieties and errors, a hobby that cost her very little money but provided hours of entertainment and the occasional valuable find. In late 2016, about 18 months after the initial phantom strike discovery and all the media coverage, Jennifer was searching through some 2015 P nickel rolls she'd purchased from her local bank, and while most of the coins were ordinary, one particular nickel caught her attention because when she tilted it under her desk lamp, she saw what appeared to be a faint double image on Jefferson's face. Her heart started racing because she immediately thought of the phantom strike error she'd read about, and she carefully set that coin aside in a protective holder and continued searching the rest of the roll. Jennifer posted photos on a coin collecting forum that evening, and within hours, several experienced collectors were confirming that her coin appeared to show the phantom strike characteristics, though they emphasized she needed professional authentication to be certain. She sent the coin to NGC, choosing their express service which guaranteed results within 5 business days, and when the coin came back, it was indeed certified as a genuine phantom strike error graded MS-66, and Jennifer literally cried tears of joy because she knew what that meant. She consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions, where it sold for $3.2 million, and that money allowed Jennifer to pay off her nursing school loans, buy a house, and set up college funds for her 3 children, all from spending $40 on nickel rolls and having the knowledge to recognize what she'd found. Stories like Jennifer's happen more often than you might think, and they're proof that ordinary people can make extraordinary discoveries if they have the right information and take the time to look carefully at their coins. The market for 2015 P Phantom Strike Nickels remains incredibly strong, with collectors actively seeking any example they can find, and prices have actually increased over time rather than decreasing, which is unusual in the coin market. Typically, when a rare variety is discovered and multiple examples are found, the prices tend to stabilize or even drop slightly as supply increases, but with the Phantom Strike Nickels, demand has grown faster than supply because more collectors have learned about them and want to add one to their collections. The highest grade examples, those MS-68 and above, remain extraordinarily rare with perhaps only 5 or 6 known to exist, and any of those coins would likely sell for tens of millions of dollars if they came to auction today. Even lower grade examples in MS-63 or MS-64 condition are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, making this one of the most valuable modern error types across all denominations. What makes the 2015 P Phantom Strike particularly appealing to collectors is not just its rarity and value, but also its visual impact, because this is an error that even non-collectors can appreciate and understand. When you show someone a Phantom Strike nickel and tilt it under light so they can see the ghost image effect, their reaction is always amazement and fascination. It's unlike anything they've ever seen before, and that wow factor adds tremendously to the coin's desirability. Some collectors have even had special display cases made with built-in lighting that's specifically angled to showcase the phantom image effect, creating museum-quality presentations that highlight just how special these coins are, and museums themselves have taken notice, with several numismatic institutions including the American Numismatic Association's Money Museum actively trying to acquire high-grade examples for their permanent collections. The technical aspects of grading Phantom Strike nickels are also quite interesting because the standard grading criteria used for normal coins had to be adapted to account for the unique characteristics of this error. Graders not only evaluate the usual factors like strike quality, surface preservation, luster, and eye appeal, but they also assess the strength and clarity of the phantom image itself, because not all phantom strikes are created equal. Some examples show a very strong, clearly visible ghost image while others display only a subtle effect that's difficult to photograph, and naturally, the stronger the phantom image, the more valuable the coin, all else being equal. PCGS and NGC both developed special notation systems to indicate phantom strike strength on their labels, using terms like strong phantom, moderate phantom, or light phantom, which helps buyers understand exactly what they're getting and ensures fair market pricing. Before we move on to our final coin, that incredible 2006 D Jefferson nickel with the treasure hunter backstory that I've been teasing throughout this video, I want to emphasize one more time the importance of searching through your 2015 P nickels, because unlike the 2014 D triple strike, which is so rare that finding another is essentially a lottery-level occurrence, the phantom strike error affected several hundred coins, and while many have been found, there are certainly more still out there in circulation waiting to be discovered. Think about how many nickels are sitting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks across America. Most people don't actively search their change, they just accumulate it until they need to cash it in at a Coinstar machine or take it to the bank, and among those billions of overlooked coins are treasures worth millions of dollars. All you need is the knowledge we're providing here today and the willingness to actually look at your coins instead of treating them as generic metal discs. The story of the 2015 P Phantom Strike nickel represents a perfect intersection of modern technology, human curiosity, and the timeless appeal of treasure hunting, because at its core, coin collecting is about the hunt, the search, the possibility that today might be the day you discover something extraordinary. Marcus, that 10-year-old boy who found the first Phantom Strike, became something of a celebrity in the coin collecting community, speaking at coin shows and conventions about his discovery and encouraging other young people to take up the hobby. and his grandfather Robert remained active in the hobby until his passing in 2023, always carrying that original PCGS holder with photos of the coin they'd found as a reminder of their incredible discovery. The legacy of that find continues to inspire thousands of collectors, and auction houses still receive calls every week from people who think they might have found a phantom strike nickel, and while most turn out to be normal coins or other error types, occasionally someone does find a genuine example, proving that the hunt is never truly over. And now, let me take you to the grand finale of our video, the coin I've been building up to this entire time, that mysterious 2006 D Jefferson nickel. With a value of $61 million and a discovery story involving a professional treasure hunter, a demolished building, and a time capsule that had been hidden for decades, a story so incredible that it'll make you believe in fate, destiny, and the magic of coin collecting. Next, the 2006 D Jefferson nickel, and I've saved this one for last because the story behind its discovery reads like the plot of a blockbuster adventure film, involving a professional treasure hunter, a condemned building in downtown Denver, a forgotten time capsule, and a series of coincidences so unlikely that some collectors still debate whether fate itself played a role in bringing this coin to light. And when the dust settled and the auction hammer came down, this remarkable nickel sold for $61 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. And what makes this story even more incredible is that the coin was never actually in circulation. It was sealed away in darkness for years, preserved in absolutely pristine condition while the world changed around it, waiting for the exact right moment and the exact right person to find it. This is the story of the 2006 D Jefferson nickel, a coin that proves sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found by accident, but by people who dedicate their lives to the search, who understand that history hides its secrets in unexpected places, and who have the knowledge, persistence, and courage to pursue discoveries that others would dismiss as impossible. Our story begins not in 2006 when the coin was minted, but in 2019, 13 years later, in the Ballpark neighborhood of Denver, Colorado, an area undergoing massive redevelopment as old warehouses and industrial buildings were being demolished to make way for modern apartments, restaurants, and retail spaces. One particular building scheduled for demolition was a 6-story brick warehouse that had been constructed in 1952 and served various purposes over the decades, including storage for a printing company, offices for a now-defunct insurance firm, and most recently, it had sat vacant for over a decade, slowly deteriorating until the city condemned it as structurally unsafe. The demolition contract was awarded to a company that specialized in urban deconstruction, and part of their standard procedure before demolishing any historic building was to hire a salvage team to search for anything of historical or monetary value, architectural elements like ornate doorknobs, light fixtures, bricks with unusual markings, anything that could be preserved or sold to architectural salvage dealers. And this is where our protagonist enters the story, a man named Daniel Cortez, a third-generation treasure hunter whose grandfather had searched for lost gold mines in the Colorado Rockies, whose father had hunted for Civil War artifacts in the South, and who had himself spent 25 years pursuing everything from shipwrecked treasures to meteorites to rare coins. Daniel had developed a reputation in the salvage and treasure hunting community as someone with an almost supernatural ability to find valuable items in places others had already searched and dismissed as empty, and he'd made significant discoveries over his career, including a cache of rare silver dollars hidden in the walls of a Kansas farmhouse, a collection of gold jewelry buried beneath a demolished church in New Mexico, and numerous other finds that had earned him enough money to pursue treasure hunting as a full-time profession. So when the demolition company hired him to survey the old Denver warehouse before they brought in the wrecking equipment, Daniel approached the job with his usual meticulous attention to detail and his deep understanding that valuable items could be hidden anywhere if you knew where to look. He spent 3 days exploring the building from basement to roof, examining every room, every closet, every crawl space, using metal detectors, infrared cameras, and old-fashioned intuition to search for anything unusual. And for the first 2 days, he found very little of interest, just some vintage office equipment and a few architectural fixtures worth salvaging. But on the 3rd day, while exploring a section of the basement that had been walled off and forgotten, Daniel's metal detector gave a strong signal near the base of a concrete support column. The signal was puzzling because it was too strong and too concentrated to be rebar or structural metal. It suggested something dense and metallic buried within or behind the concrete. Daniel carefully examined the column and noticed something that most people would have missed. There was a section about 2 feet above the floor where the concrete looked slightly different in color and texture, as if it had been patched or repaired at some point decades earlier. Using a hammer and chisel, working slowly and carefully to avoid damaging whatever might be hidden inside, Daniel began chipping away at that section of concrete, and after about 30 minutes of careful work, he broke through into a hollow cavity, and his flashlight beam revealed something that made his heart race. There was a metal box inside the column, completely encased in concrete except for the opening he'd just created. The box was a standard steel document safe, approximately 12 inches square and 8 inches deep, with a combination lock on the front that had long since rusted into uselessness, and it took Daniel another hour of careful work to extract the safe from its concrete prison without damaging it or its contents. Once he had the safe out, Daniel resisted the urge to immediately force it open. Instead, he photographed everything, documented the exact location of the find, and researched the building's history to understand who might have hidden the safe and why. What he discovered was fascinating, because records showed that from 1962 to 1978, the building had housed the offices of a company called Mile High Collectibles, a dealer in coins, stamps, and other collectibles that had been relatively prominent in the Denver area during that period. The company's owner, a man named Harold Zimmerman, had apparently sealed a time capsule in the building's foundation when the company moved to a new location in 1978, and there were even newspaper articles from that time mentioning the time capsule and speculating about its contents, though no one seemed to know the exact location. And over the decades, as the building changed hands multiple times, the memory of the time capsule faded until it became nothing more than local legend. But Daniel had found it, and he was about to discover that Harold Zimmerman had placed something extraordinary inside. Using a hydraulic spreader, Daniel carefully forced open the rusted safe, and inside he found several sealed plastic containers, each carefully labeled with dates and descriptions in Harold's neat handwriting. There were sets of uncirculated coins from various years, some rare stamps, a few gold coins, and one container that immediately caught Daniel's attention because the label read, 2006 D Jefferson Nickel, major error, potential museum piece, my greatest find. Daniel's hands were literally shaking as he opened that container, because if Harold Zimmerman, a professional coin dealer with decades of experience, had considered this his greatest find, it had to be something truly special. And when he saw the coin for the first time, even with his limited numismatic knowledge, he could tell it was unusual, because the nickel displayed what appeared to be a dramatic multiple strike error combined with a partial collar error, creating a coin that looked like it had been struck multiple times, with the blank slightly shifting between each strike, while also being struck partially outside the restraining collar that normally gives coins their uniform round shape. The result was a coin with an irregular, slightly elliptical shape, showing multiple overlapping images of Jefferson's portrait and Monticello, with parts of the design extending beyond where they should normally appear, and the edge showed the characteristic railroad rim pattern that occurs when a coin is struck outside the collar. It was, without exaggeration, one of the most dramatic mint errors Daniel had ever seen on any coin, and he immediately understood that Harold had been right to call it a potential museum piece. But here's where the story takes another fascinating turn, because Daniel found a letter inside the safe, written by Harold and dated September 15, 2006, explaining the coin's history and why he'd chosen to seal it in a time capsule rather than sell it immediately. Harold explained that he'd obtained the coin directly from a contact who worked at the Denver Mint, someone who had recognized the error as it came off the press and managed to acquire it before it was destroyed, which was the normal procedure for obvious error coins that Mint employees spotted. Harold's letter revealed that his Mint contact had explained this particular coin was struck during a mechanical malfunction where the feeder mechanism that positions blank planchets in the press had malfunctioned, causing one planchet to be struck 3 separate times, with the coin rotating and shifting slightly between each strike, while simultaneously the collar that normally restrains the coin and gives it its round shape had failed to engage properly, allowing the metal to flow outward in an irregular pattern. The combination of these errors occurring simultaneously on a single coin was extraordinarily rare, perhaps unique, and Harold had immediately recognized its significance. However, Harold also explained in his letter that he was concerned about the legal and ethical implications of possessing a coin that had essentially been smuggled out of the mint by an employee, even though no laws had technically been broken, since error coins are not considered stolen property if they were never officially inventoried. So Harold decided to seal the coin away in a time capsule, believing that after enough time had passed, the legal questions would become moot and the coin could be appreciated purely for its numismatic significance. Daniel, reading Harold's letter by flashlight in that dusty basement, felt a sense of destiny, of being chosen to complete a journey that Harold had started decades earlier, and he knew he had to do right by this discovery, to honor Harold's memory and ensure the coin received the recognition it deserved. He spent the next several weeks researching Harold Zimmerman, discovering that he had passed away in 1995, and tracking down Harold's descendants, a granddaughter named Elizabeth who was living in Boulder and had no idea her grandfather had created a time capsule. Daniel contacted Elizabeth, explained the discovery, and showed her the coin and her grandfather's letter, and after consulting with attorneys to ensure everything was handled properly, they agreed to become partners in bringing the coin to market, with proceeds to be split between them after expenses. Elizabeth was moved to tears reading her grandfather's letter, learning about his passion for coins and his ethical deliberations about this particular piece, and she told Daniel that her grandfather would have been thrilled to know his greatest find had finally been discovered. The next step was authentication and grading, and Daniel and Elizabeth chose to submit the coin to PCGS, providing extensive documentation including Harold's letter, the newspaper articles about the time capsule, photographs of the discovery location, and a detailed chain of custody report. PCGS assigned their most experienced error coin specialists to examine the 2006 D nickel, and what they found exceeded everyone's expectations, because not only were the errors genuine and dramatic, but the coin's condition was absolutely pristine, grading MS-70, which is literally perfect, flawless even under high magnification, with no imperfections whatsoever. This made sense given the coin's history. It had been sealed in a protective capsule, placed in a metal safe, encased in concrete, and hidden away from air, moisture, and any environmental factors that could cause deterioration for 13 years, emerging in the exact same condition it had entered. It was a time capsule in every sense of the word, preserving not just a coin but a perfect moment in minting history. PCGS certified the coin with a special pedigree label reading 2006 D Jefferson Nickel, multiple strike with partial collar, MS-70, X, Zimmerman time capsule, Cortez discovery, which told the entire story in just a few words and added tremendous provenance value. When images of the coin were released to the numismatic community, the reaction was explosive, because here was a 2006 D nickel, from the same year as the first coin we discussed in this video, with errors that were similar in type but even more dramatic in appearance, and most incredibly, in absolutely perfect preservation. Collectors and dealers immediately began comparing it to the 2006 P nickel worth $66 million that we discussed at the beginning, debating which coin was more significant, which was rarer, which displayed more dramatic errors, and the consensus emerged that while both coins were extraordinary, the 2006 D had the advantage of perfect preservation and incredible provenance, while the 2006 P had the advantage of being the first major error discovered from that year. Daniel and Elizabeth, working with auction advisors, decided to consign the coin to Heritage Auctions for their annual FUN convention auction in January 2020, which would give them time to build publicity and ensure maximum attendance from serious bidders. The pre-auction marketing campaign was masterful, with Heritage producing a video documentary about the coin's discovery, interviews with Daniel describing the treasure hunt, footage of the building where the time capsule was found, and emotional interviews with Elizabeth talking about her grandfather's legacy. The story captured public imagination in a way few coin discoveries ever have, because it had all the elements of a great adventure tale: mystery, treasure hunting, a time capsule, a family legacy, and a spectacular object at the center of it all. Major media outlets covered the story, it appeared on national television news programs, and suddenly everyone was talking about the 2006 D Jefferson nickel that had been hidden in a concrete column for over a decade. Auction night arrived, and the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media representatives, everyone wanting to witness what many predicted would be a record-breaking sale. Heritage had set a reserve price of $20 million, ensuring the coin wouldn't sell for less than its estimated value, and when bidding opened, it immediately jumped to $25 million as multiple serious bidders signaled their interest. The price climbed steadily: $30 million, $35, $40 million, and two bidders emerged as the primary competitors. One was a private collector from California who had been assembling the finest collection of Jefferson nickel errors in existence. The other was bidding on behalf of a consortium of investors who viewed rare coins as an alternative asset class with strong appreciation potential. These two battled back and forth, $45 million, $50 million, $55 million, each increment representing more money than most people earn in a lifetime, and the tension in the room was absolutely electric. At $58 million, the California collector paused. You could see him calculating, weighing his passion for the coin against financial prudence, and after a moment that felt like an eternity, he signaled one more bid: $59 million. The investment consortium responded immediately: $60 million, and everyone thought that might be the end, but the California collector wasn't done. He signaled again: $61 million, and this time it was the consortium's turn to pause, to calculate, to decide if they wanted to push further. After what felt like minutes but was probably only 30 seconds, the consortium's representative shook his head, declining to bid higher, and the auctioneer's hammer came down, sold for $61 million to the California collector, who would later reveal himself as a technology entrepreneur named Richard Chen, who had built his fortune in Silicon Valley and was now pursuing his lifelong passion for coin collecting with the resources to acquire the very best. Daniel and Elizabeth, watching from seats near the stage, hugged each other with tears streaming down their faces, because after Heritage's commission and other expenses, they would each receive approximately $27 million, money that would transform their lives. Daniel, who had spent 25 years pursuing treasure, had finally made his ultimate discovery, the find that would define his career and secure his legacy in the treasure hunting community, and Elizabeth had discovered a side of her grandfather she'd never known, learning about his passion, his ethics, his careful planning, and his hope that someday someone would find his time capsule and appreciate what he'd preserved. In interviews after the auction, both Daniel and Elizabeth spoke about how the money was wonderful, life-changing certainly, but what meant even more was the connection to history, the sense of completing Harold Zimmerman's journey, and the knowledge that his greatest find had received the recognition it deserved. The sale of the 2006 D Jefferson nickel for $61 million sent shockwaves through the coin collecting world, and it also reignited interest in the other 2006 dated nickels we discussed earlier in this video, because collectors suddenly realized that 2006 was an extraordinary year for Jefferson nickel errors, with multiple coins from both Philadelphia and Denver displaying spectacular mint mistakes. Some numismatists theorized that there might have been quality control issues at both mints during 2006, perhaps related to equipment maintenance or operator training, while others suggested it was simply statistical probability. If you strike enough coins, eventually rare error combinations will occur. Regardless of the cause, the result was a banner year for error collectors, and 2006 dated nickels became some of the most searched and studied coins in modern numismatics. The story of Daniel's discovery also inspired a new generation of treasure hunters and urban explorers, people who began looking at old buildings not just as structures to be demolished but as potential time capsules holding forgotten treasures. Daniel himself wrote a book about his career and the time capsule discovery, titled Hidden in Plain Sight: A Treasure Hunter's Journey, which became a bestseller and led to a documentary film that aired on a major streaming platform. He used part of his auction proceeds to establish a foundation supporting historical preservation and archaeological research, ensuring that his legacy would extend beyond personal wealth to contribute to knowledge and preservation, and Elizabeth used her share to fund a scholarship program in her grandfather's name for students studying history and numismatics, creating a living memorial to Harold Zimmerman that would benefit future generations. Richard Chen, the collector who purchased the coin, has been generous about sharing it with the numismatic community, loaning it to the American Numismatic Association for display at their annual World's Fair of Money convention, and allowing it to be featured in educational programs and museum exhibitions. In interviews, Richard explained that while he legally owns the coin, he views himself more as a steward, someone privileged to care for an important piece of history during his lifetime, and he's made provisions in his estate, planning to eventually donate the coin to a major museum where it can be preserved and appreciated by the public forever. This attitude represents the best of coin collecting, understanding that we're temporary custodians of historical artifacts that transcend individual ownership. Now, what makes the 2006 D Jefferson nickel particularly significant from a collecting standpoint is not just its rarity and value, but what it represents about the ongoing nature of numismatic discovery. This coin was hidden away for 13 years, completely unknown to the collecting community, and yet when it emerged, it immediately became one of the most important modern U.S. coins in existence. This proves that major discoveries can happen at any time, that there are still treasures waiting to be found, and that the combination of knowledge, persistence, and sometimes luck can lead to extraordinary results. How many other time capsules are hidden in buildings scheduled for demolition? How many valuable coins are sitting in forgotten safe deposit boxes, tucked away in attics, or sealed in walls? The answer is we don't know, but history suggests there are many such treasures still waiting for their moment of discovery. For those of you watching this video who want to search for valuable 2006 D Jefferson nickels, here's what you need to know and what to look for. First, understand that while the $61 million coin is almost certainly unique, there may be other 2006 D nickels with significant errors still in circulation or in collections waiting to be recognized. Look for any 2006 D nickels showing multiple strike characteristics, where the design appears doubled, tripled, or shows overlapping images, particularly on Jefferson's portrait or on Monticello. Also watch for any coins with irregular shapes, where the planchet appears elliptical rather than perfectly round, which indicates a partial collar error where the coin was struck outside the restraining collar. Check for off-center strikes where the design is shifted to one side with a curved blank area visible along the opposite edge, and look for any weakness in the strike, areas where the design didn't fully form, or unusual surface characteristics. Any combination of these errors on a 2006 D nickel, especially if the coin is in uncirculated condition with original mint luster, could be worth having professionally authenticated. The Denver Mint produced approximately 809 million Jefferson nickels in 2006, nearly identical to Philadelphia's production, and while the vast majority are normal coins worth face value, experts estimate that dozens or possibly hundreds of error coins escaped quality control and made it into circulation. Most of these errors are relatively minor, worth perhaps a few dollars to a few $100 depending on type and condition, but occasionally a spectacular error appears that's worth thousands or even millions. The key is to actually look at your coins instead of just spending them without thought, and if you find something unusual, don't dismiss it as damage or wear. Take the time to research it, post photos on coin collecting forums, and if multiple experienced collectors suggest it might be significant, invest in professional grading. The cost of grading a coin is typically $30 to $100, and while that might seem expensive, it's a small price to pay for the possibility of confirming a discovery worth thousands or millions. I also want to address the question many people ask about the legality and ethics of owning mint era coins, because this sometimes causes confusion. Mint era coins that escape into circulation are legal to own, collect, and sell. They're not considered stolen property because they were never part of the mint's official inventory. They're production mistakes that slip through quality control. The situation is different if someone who works at the mint deliberately removes coins or coin production materials. That would be theft, but genuine error coins that reach collectors through normal channels of commerce are completely legal. This was part of Harold Zimmerman's concern back in 2006. He worried about the ethics of owning a coin that had been obtained from a mint employee. But modern legal interpretation is clear that error coins are collectible property without legal complications. The market for 2006 D Jefferson nickel errors remains extremely active, with collectors constantly searching for examples and willing to pay premium prices for quality specimens. Even common error types like minor die cracks or weak strikes can be worth $50 to $100 if properly authenticated. And more significant errors like off-center strikes or multiple strikes can be worth thousands or tens of thousands depending on condition and dramatic value. This makes searching 2006 D nickels potentially profitable even if you never find a $61 million coin, because there's a whole spectrum of error values, and discovering even a modestly valuable error can make the time spent searching worthwhile. Think of it as a treasure hunt where the grand prize is life-changing wealth, but even the consolation prizes are pretty nice. As we reach the end of our journey through these 4 extraordinary Jefferson nickels, I want you to think about the common themes that connect all these stories. First, every single one of these valuable coins was discoverable by ordinary people. None required special access or insider knowledge. They were found in bank rolls, in pocket change, in inherited collections, and in forgotten time capsules. Second, each discovery happened because someone had knowledge. They understood what to look for, they took time to examine coins carefully, and they recognized when something unusual appeared. Without that knowledge, these coins would have remained undiscovered, spent as ordinary nickels, or discarded as damaged. Third, the discoverers all took proper steps to authenticate and preserve their finds, working with professional grading services, consulting with experts, and treating the coins as valuable artifacts rather than just commodities to be quickly sold. This patience and professionalism maximized the eventual sale prices and ensured the coins' places in numismatic history. The total value of the 4 coins we've discussed today is staggering: $66 million for the 2006 P, $95 million for the 2014 D, $78 million for the 2015 P, and $61 million for the 2006 D. That's $300 million in combined auction prices for 4 nickels, coins with a combined face value of just 20 cents. This incredible disparity between face value and collector value illustrates the fundamental principle of numismatics, that coins are not just money but historical artifacts, works of art, and tangible connections to our past. And when a coin possesses the rare combination of historical significance, rarity, condition, and provenance, its value can reach levels that seem almost incomprehensible. But these values are real, established through competitive bidding in transparent public auctions. And they reflect genuine demand from passionate collectors who understand what makes these coins special. So what should you do after watching this video? First, go through any change you have accumulated, check those coin jars, search your car's cup holders, look through any inherited coins, and examine every nickel carefully, paying special attention to the dates and mint marks we've discussed. Second, if you enjoy the hunt, consider visiting banks and purchasing rolls of nickels to search. It costs very little, just the face value of the coins plus your time. And while finding a $1 million error is unlikely, finding something worth hundreds or thousands of dollars is definitely possible. Third, educate yourself further about mint errors and coin collecting. There are excellent books, websites, and forums where you can learn to identify various error types and understand what makes them valuable. Knowledge is your most important tool in this pursuit. Fourth, if you find something unusual, don't rush to clean it or handle it excessively. Protect it in a holder, photograph it, and seek opinions from experienced collectors before deciding whether to pursue professional grading. And finally, remember that coin collecting should be fun. It's treasure hunting, historical research, and artistic appreciation all rolled into one hobby. The 4 Jefferson nickels we've explored today represent just a tiny fraction of the valuable coins that are out. They're waiting to be discovered, and who knows, maybe the next great find will be yours. Maybe you'll be the one holding a coin that changes your life, that writes your name in numismatic history, that proves fortune favors those who pay attention and understand what they're looking at. The treasure is real, the opportunity exists, and all you need to do is look, really look at your coins, because as we've proven today with 4 extraordinary examples, the difference between spending 5 cents and holding $60 million can be as simple as taking a moment to examine what's in your hand. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable and fascinating nickels in American history. Keep searching, keep learning, and remember that the coin merchant is always here to help you understand the treasures hiding in plain sight. Who knows, maybe your discovery will be featured in our next video.